Dr. Hyatt, let's start talking about masturbation.
Well, first let me thank you for flying in. The weather here in the islands is beautiful today. I hear the weather on the mainland is a little cold, and I'm not looking forward to going back, but as you know, I must get the black book out, the new black book. In regards to masturbation, it seems that many people, no matter how enlightened they think they are or appear to be, still have certain twinges regarding this subject. Back in 1758, a Swiss physician, I think his name was Tissot, posited that masturbation was the cause of all madness. And frankly, many people today still believe this. I recently read of a young boy committing suicide after he masturbated. Apparently he was a member of a fundamentalistic church and had gone to see their religious counselor regarding his preoccupation with masturbation. And after his therapy session, went home, masturbated, and then cut his wrists and bled to death. Throughout recent history, we've had people like Dr. Graham of the famous grain cracker family and Dr. Kellogg of cornflakes assert that eating spicy food or interesting food was the cause of masturbation. Dr. Graham suggested that no man should ejaculate more than 12 times a year, even during intercourse. So both invented a food, the grain cracker and cornflakes. Cornflakes is sometimes called by the more humorous moral fiber or porn flakes. With that aside, masturbation in the Bible, in the Old Testament, of course, is the spilling of seed, which is a sin. And for the Jews, the spilling of seed was considered to be a direct affront to God, as the purpose of the seed, of course, was to make more little Jews to follow the dictates of Moses. In the New Testament, there's very little mention of masturbation, and the Christians have a wonderful time in dealing with that problem. For them, it is a problem because they're very much against it, and they don't want to rely on the Old Testament. So what they've come up with to solve the problem is the Sermon on the Mount. They mention that Jesus talks about lust in the heart as being equivalent to or even worse than committing a horrible act. And as such, from there they segue right into masturbation, because it's in the mind with the images and the fantasies where you're committing the real sin against God. You're having these horrid images and fantasies. In an attempt to counter that, we here at Falcon, and Dr. Agardi when he was alive, discussed and developed techniques for using masturbation as a form of Western Tantra. I believe I mentioned that in one of my books, I think Secrets of Western Tantra, but I didn't dilate on it. So we'll talk a little bit more about using masturbation as a Tantra technique, and also we want to assure that we've extinguished any fearful or anxious response to the idea or the act of masturbation. So if you find that you do have any associations that relate to fear or anxiety concerning the act of masturbation, I think it's time that you sit down and make a list of what these thoughts and associations are and trace them back to their origin. And then I think that when you do masturbate, and I think you should masturbate if you do have a problem with it or anxiety concerning it, I think you should masturbate frequently. As Regardi said, if tempted, yield. And he meant that quite literally in that context. I think you should masturbate frequently, but the purpose of that is to help you extinguish any anxiety or concern regarding any sexual prohibition that was inculcated in you during childhood or adolescence either by your parents or your teachers or the culture in general. So the purpose of it is that you masturbate in order to bring out not just your seed, but bring out the origins of your problems. One of the things that we want to do after we have our list of anxieties or fears regarding masturbation is to do the following technique. We call this the laughing breath. The laughing breath is designed to break up tension in the face and in the jaw, and particularly in the top of the chest, and to free the belly. It goes like this. You first take in a nice, clean, simple breath, and then you go, ha, 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 ha. We'll do it again. Ha, 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 ha. Now do that about 5 or 6 times. Follow it by doing this. Take in the breath again. He, 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 he. He, 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 he. Make sure all the breath is out before you take in the new breath. Do that about 5 or 6 times, followed by ha 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 ha. Do that at least 5 or 6 times, or until you spontaneously start to laugh. Once you have this technique down, go back and masturbate. And when you're done masturbating, clean up, get rid of the evidence, and then simply start laughing, using that technique if you need, as loud and as hard as you can. Just laugh yourself silly. You might notice a number of things going on. You might notice later in the day that certain thoughts or ideas pop into your mind that are rather new to you. It's a good idea to make a list of those and go over them at a later time. You also might notice that the next time you masturbate, it may be either very difficult for you to do so, or a lot easier, and more significantly, a lot more pleasurable. So the important thing here, the principle here, is with anxiety or fear or thoughts which indicate that there's anxiety or fear behind something, is to pair up with it the opposite response. So we know if we're anxious or fearful or judgmental, we're supposed to be very serious. Well, don't let yourself become serious. As soon as you feel anxiety or fear, and you're in a safe environment, in other words, don't do this in the supermarket, as one of my listeners had, make yourself laugh. Do anything, make it artificial. It doesn't matter if it's artificial. It brings all the muscles, it brings all the brain tissue, all the necessary chemicals into play, and sooner or later, you'll be able to laugh at the drop of a hat.